There is a weight many of us carry, a cold, heavy stone in the pit of our stomach. It is the burden of unforgiveness. We are told that to be free, we must simply let it go. But how do you let go of a wound that is still bleeding? How do you forgive when some part of you feels that to do so would be to say that what happened was okay? What if the entire concept of letting go is a lie? The great psychologist Carl Jung offered a path to a much deeper, more authentic form of freedom. A freedom that is not found by looking at the person who hurt you, but by courageously looking at yourself. He taught that true forgiveness is impossible as long as we are projecting our own shadow. As long as we see in them the darkness we refuse to see in ourselves. The key to unlocking the chains of the past is hidden within the disowned parts of your own soul. In our time together today, we will redefine forgiveness. First, we will explore why the conventional advice to forgive and forget so often fails and can even feel like a betrayal. Then we will unmask the powerful Jungian concept of shadow projection and how it keeps us chained to resentment. And most importantly, I will guide you on the path of shadow integration, the true alchemical work that allows you to release yourself from the grip of the past without ever having to condone it. This is not about letting them off the hook. This is about taking yourself off of it. To begin this profound work, let us make a declaration of intent. Write in the comments below, I am ready to be free. The burden of unforgiveness is heavy. It is a ghost that sits at your dinner table, a cold presence that lies in bed with you at night. It replays the scene of the crime, the moment of betrayal, with perfect, agonizing clarity. And the world tells you, with a gentle, dismissive wave of the hand, to simply let it go. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, they say. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And while these statements hold a sliver of truth, they are also profoundly invalidating. They skip a crucial step. They ask you to build a roof on a house with no foundation. The first reason why conventional forgiveness so often fails is because it denies the legitimacy of your pain. It subtly shames you for your anger. It suggests that your inability to move on is a character flaw, a lack of spiritual maturity. But your anger, your hurt, your sense of injustice, these are not flaws. They are sacred responses. They are the loyal guardians of your soul, the parts of you that rose up to say, what happened here was not right. A boundary was violated. A trust was broken. To simply paper over these feelings with a premature act of forgiveness is an act of self-betrayal. It is to abandon the wounded child within you all over again. True healing does not begin with ignoring the guardians at the gate. It begins with honoring them, listening to them, understanding why they are standing watch so fiercely. Let's meet Michael. He is 52, a man who built a successful catering business from the ground up with his best friend and partner of 20 years. 2 years ago, he discovered that this friend, a man he trusted like a brother, had been embezzling money from their company for years. The betrayal was absolute. It shattered his business, his finances, and his belief in human connection. Now, Michael is a ghost of his former self. He is consumed by a cold, simmering rage. He replays conversations, looking for clues he missed. He imagines confrontations that will never happen. His family, his therapist,
his friends, they all tell him the same thing. You have to forgive him, Michael. Not for him, for you. You have to let it go to be free. And Michael has tried. He has tried meditation. He has tried writing letters he never sends. But every time he attempts to say the words, "I forgive you," even in his own mind, a violent resistance rises up in him. It feels like a lie. It feels like he would be erasing the profound injustice of what happened. It feels like he would be letting his friend off the hook. So he remains trapped, chained to the past by the very act that is supposed to set him free. What is happening here? From a Jungian perspective, Michael is not just struggling to forgive his friend, he is struggling with his own shadow. The concept of the shadow, as we've explored, is the container for everything we have disowned about ourselves: our anger, our greed, our capacity for deceit. For a man like Michael, who built his life on the values of loyalty, hard work, and trust, the idea that he himself could possess any capacity for betrayal is unthinkable. That is a quality that belongs to bad people, to his former friend, not to him. So he has exiled that part of himself, the inner betrayer, deep into his unconscious shadow. And this is where we uncover the secret mechanism that makes true forgiveness so difficult: the Jungian concept of shadow projection. We cannot stand the anxiety of our own disowned darkness, so we unconsciously project it onto others. The world becomes a screen, and we cast the movie of our inner life onto the people around us. The qualities we despise most vehemently in others are often the very qualities we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. The other person becomes a living symbol of our own shadow. For Michael, his friend is no longer just a man who made a terrible choice. He has become the embodiment of betrayal itself. He is the container for all of Michael's own disowned capacity for darkness. And how can you forgive a symbol? How can you forgive a monster? You can't. As long as his friend carries the full weight of this projected shadow, Michael will remain chained to him. His friend has become the jailer of a part of Michael's own soul. The rage he feels is not just about the money. It is the violent energy of his own psyche trying to reject a part of itself that has been made visible. This is the profound, counterintuitive key that Carl Jung provides. The inability to forgive someone else is often a direct reflection of our inability to face something within ourselves. The lock is not on their door. It is on our own. And the key is not a gentle act of letting go. It is the courageous, terrifying work of taking a look in the mirror and being willing to see the flicker of our own darkness in the reflection. To face the shadow is to turn the light of consciousness inward. It is to ask the difficult questions. It is to move from the certainty of blame to the courageous uncertainty of self-inquiry. This does not mean what happened to you was your fault. Let us be absolutely clear on that. The betrayal was real. The hurt was real. The shadow work is not about absolving the other person. It is about liberating yourself from the energetic chains that still connect you to them. And the strongest chain is the chain of projection. So how do we begin to recognize our own projections? The first clue is the intensity of the emotional charge. When your reaction to someone's behavior is a 10 out of 10, when it is absolute, all-consuming, and leaves no room for nuance, you are very likely in the presence of a shadow projection. Your conscious mind is reacting to the person in front of you, but your unconscious is reacting to a ghost from your own past. Your condemnation of them is not just about their action. It is a defense against a similar quality you fear within yourself. Let's imagine a woman, Chloe. She's 45, a dedicated intensive care nurse. She has a younger sister who she perceives as incredibly irresponsible. Her sister drifts from job to job, is often late with her rent, and lives a spontaneous, unstructured life. Chloe feels a constant simmering resentment and judgment towards her. She often finds herself lecturing her sister, trying to fix her life. The emotional charge is a 10 out of 10. But what is this really about? Chloe has built her entire identity around being the responsible one, the caretaker, the one who holds everything together. Her shadow contains her own disowned desire for freedom, her own longing for a life with less structure, less responsibility, her own terror of what would happen if she ever let go of control. Her sister is living out Chloe's golden shadow, the part of her that is spontaneous, free-spirited, and perhaps a little bit wild. Because she cannot own this desire in herself, she judges it as irresponsibility in her sister. Her constant attempts to fix her sister are actually a subconscious attempt to control the part of herself that she fears. She is not trying to save her sister. She is trying to cage her own shadow. This dynamic plays out in countless ways. The person who is rigidly moralistic often has a shadow full of repressed hedonistic desires. They will be the first to condemn the sinner. The person who is a pathological people pleaser often has a shadow full of rage and resentment. They will be infuriated by anyone who is openly assertive or selfish. As Carl Jung famously said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Your triggers are not random. They are a personalized curriculum for your own healing. So how do we begin to do this difficult, transformative work? How do we start to withdraw our projections and see what is ours and what is theirs? It begins with a practice of radical self-honesty. Here is a powerful shadow work prompt I invite you to explore. I call it the shadow resonance. Take out your journal. Bring to mind the person who holds the heaviest emotional weight for you, the one it feels impossible to forgive, and ask yourself this courageous question. Beyond their harmful action, what is the core quality in them that I find most repulsive? Is it their selfishness, their weakness, their arrogance, their deceit? Be brutally honest. Name the quality. Now for the second, much harder part of the question. Where does a tiny 1% version of that same quality live in me? In what context have I ever acted with a flicker of that same energy? Let's return to Michael, the man whose business partner betrayed him. The quality he despises most in his friend is deceit. For him, his friend is the embodiment of a liar. Michael sees himself as the complete opposite, an honest, trustworthy man. But as he courageously sits with this question, a memory surfaces, a memory he had long forgotten. Years ago, in the early days of their business, he made a mistake on a quote for a client, undercharging them by a significant amount. Instead of admitting the mistake, he quietly cut corners on the materials to protect their profit margin. He never told his partner. He told himself it was a smart business decision, but in this moment of honest reflection, he sees it for what it was. It was a small act of deceit. This realization does not excuse his friend's massive betrayal. The two actions are not morally equivalent, but that is not the point of the exercise. The point is that by acknowledging his own capacity for deceit, however small, he punctures the myth of his own absolute purity. He sees that the quality he projected entirely onto his friend also exists within his own shadow. In that moment, his friend shifts from being a two-dimensional monster to a three-dimensional human being who made a terrible choice. A human being who, like himself, possesses both light and shadow. This is the beginning of compassion, not for the act of betrayal, but for the shared flawed humanity. And as he owns a piece of his own shadow, the emotional charge he feels towards his friend begins to lessen. The projection is being withdrawn. He is taking back a piece of his own soul that he had hung on his friend, and in doing so, he takes the first true step towards his own freedom.
To see your own shadow in the mirror of another is a moment of shattering humility, but it is also the beginning of your liberation. Because the moment you own even 1% of the darkness, you take back 100% of your power. You are no longer a helpless victim in their story. You become a conscious participant in your own. The integration of the shadow is the process of taking back all the parts of yourself that you have outsourced to the world. This does not mean you become the darkness you see. It means you develop a conscious relationship with it. This is the heart of the Jungian path. It is not about being perfect, it is about being whole. Wholeness means you can hold the tension of the opposites within you. You can be both generous and have a capacity for selfishness. You can be both truthful and have a capacity for deceit. You can be both loving and have a capacity for rage. By acknowledging this shared human truth, you move out of the simplistic fairy tale of good versus evil and into the complex, compassionate reality of the human condition. So what does forgiveness look like from this place of wholeness? It looks radically different from what we've been taught. True Jungian forgiveness is a three-step internal process. It has nothing to do with telling the other person they are excused. It has everything to do with setting yourself free. The first step is owning your part. This is what Michael began when he acknowledged his own small act of deceit. It is the act of withdrawing the projection. You look at the situation and you consciously separate what is theirs from what is yours. What is theirs is their action, their choice, their betrayal. You do not condone it, you do not excuse it. You hold them fully accountable for it in your own mind. What is yours is your reaction, your trigger, the part of your own shadow that their action illuminated. By owning your part, you are not taking the blame for what they did. You are taking responsibility for your own healing. You are saying, their action revealed a wound in me, and I am now choosing to tend to my own wound rather than continuing to curse the one who pointed to it. The second step is the dialogue with the shadow. This is an active, imaginative practice. You have identified the part of your shadow that was triggered, the inner betrayer for Michael, the inner irresponsibility for Chloe. Now you invite that part to speak. In your journal or in a quiet meditation, you ask this shadow part, "Why are you here? What do you want me to know? What are you trying to protect me from?" You listen for the answer without judgment. Michael's inner betrayer might answer, "I am here because I am terrified of failure.
I cut that corner years ago because I was afraid of looking incompetent. I am the part of you that will do anything to survive. Chloe's inner irresponsibility might say, I am here because you have been a prisoner of duty your whole life. I am your longing for freedom. I am the part of you that just wants to breathe. This dialogue is profoundly healing. You are learning that your shadow is not a monster. It is a lost, frightened, and often brilliant part of you that is operating on an old, outdated survival program. By listening to it, you begin to build a bridge of compassion to it. You are integrating it. And this leads to the third and final step, the release. This is what we call true forgiveness. It is not a forced act of will. It is the natural, effortless consequence of the first two steps. When you have owned your projection and you have understood the protective intention of your own shadow, the intense emotional charge you held towards the other person simply dissolves. It loses its fuel. You no longer need them to be the villain in your story because you are no longer playing the victim. You no longer need them to carry your disowned darkness because you are now courageously carrying it for yourself. The forgiveness is not something you do to them. It is something that happens to you. It is the feeling of a chain long wrapped around your heart, finally falling away. You don't forget what happened, but it no longer has power over you. The memory shifts from a bleeding wound to a scar. And a scar is a reminder not of the pain, but of the fact that you healed. This is the true gift of the shadow in the work of forgiveness. It teaches us that the path to peace is not found by looking away from the darkness. It is found by walking directly through it, by having the courage to see that the monster you were fighting on the outside was but a reflection of a lost part of yourself on the inside. By meeting that lost part with compassion, you not only heal yourself, you develop the capacity to see the lost, wounded parts in others. And from that place, true, profound, soul-level forgiveness is no longer an obligation. It becomes an instinct.
Today, we have walked into the heart of a paradox. We learned that the path to true forgiveness of another leads directly through the darkest landscapes of our own soul. We began by honoring the heavy, unseen burden of unforgiveness and the inadequacy of the simple advice to let it go. We saw through the story of Mikhail how a past betrayal can keep us chained, not just to a person, but to a painful story about ourselves. We then unmasked the secret saboteur, the Jungian concept of shadow projection. We discovered how we unconsciously cast the movie of our own disowned darkness onto others, making them into monsters so we can remain the heroes of our own story. And most importantly, we learned a new, more authentic path to freedom. A path that does not require you to condone the actions of others, but demands that you take responsibility for yourself. Through the courageous shadow work of owning your part and dialoguing with the shadow, we discovered that true forgiveness is not an act you perform. It is a state of grace you arrive at when you have finally integrated the disowned parts of yourself. It is the release that happens when you no longer need anyone else to be your villain. The great secret of forgiveness is this: it was never about them. It was always about you, about your willingness to be whole, about your courage to face your own complexity, about your compassion for the shared, flawed, beautiful humanity that resides in all of us, the light and the shadow. To integrate your shadow is to develop a kind of spiritual X-ray vision. You learn to look at a person's hurtful behavior and see the wounded child behind it. You learn to look at your own intense reaction and see the loyal guardian trying to protect you. This does not mean you must stay in harmful situations. In fact, the opposite is true. As you become more whole, your tolerance for inauthentic, disrespectful, or damaging connections diminishes. You begin to value your own peace more than you fear someone else's disapproval. And this leads to one of the most powerful and sacred acts of the integrated self: the ability to say a clean, clear, compassionate no. How do we honor our own soul's truth by setting powerful boundaries? How do we say no, not from a place of anger or fear, but from a deep self-love? That is the profound and practical territory we will explore in our next journey together as we uncover the sacred no, honoring your soul's truth. For now, your invitation is to take the first step on this path of authentic freedom, to begin the work of withdrawing your projection. In the comments below, I invite you to make a quiet, powerful declaration. You do not need to name a person or an event. Simply claim the work for yourself. Write, "I am taking my power back." By typing these words, you are signaling to your soul that you are ready to stop looking outward for justice and to start looking inward for liberation. Thank you for your courage to be whole. Your freedom is waiting.